All right, YouTube, what is going on? Welcome to, what are we at, Thursday? The madness continues. So this is going to be a little discussion here about what you see on the screen. And third order effects, counterparty interest, all kinds of stuff. If you haven't been paying attention, or if you didn't notice, Bitcoin was over 100,000 yesterday and most of today, and it's retreated a little bit, but fully expect it to pop back up there and whatnot. So paying attention, trying to see what's going on. There you can see hit 103,000. Like I said in previous, we've been watching and seeing what's going on with here, trying to watch the H bar, lamenting with dad on YouTube that it didn't go down to a buying price and spiked up in the last few weeks, or actually the last week alone, up to 39. You can see there, trying to get it back down below 10. Let's go. But that's neither here nor there, or it kind of is here, but it's there. But Bitcoin coin in particular. So trying to think about this rationally and not emotionally, because people get all into those, all together cult followings on some of this stuff. So a massive amount of money has jumped into this thing, right? In the last month in particular, and in the last 6 months as well. You can see that from 38 up to where we are, threefold increase basically this year. Just a massive amount of cash, right? Massive amounts of money. This isn't 420 Homestead and his buddies pushing buttons on a computer. This is big time money getting into this. All those mutual funds had a huge effect. Banks, other people getting into it. And the rush, it seems like since the election, the rush is on to get in. As you can see there from the last month since the election, basically, as it had doubled before that, and now it's increased that amount since the election, of Trump being the Bitcoin president, because he specifically said he wanted to make America the greatest crypto place in the world, and all that comes with that, and some of his nominations now with Treasury and the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, specifically being crypto bros, specifically being like bros, like we're gonna make all these regulations to make this happen, because that's what's really going to happen. It ain't like they're going to make this free market of crypto. They're going to make these regulations that favor government influence over crypto, my opinion. That's the thing to be cautious about with this. That's one thing. One thing is all the money, and all the big money is getting into it. And why? You got to ask about the why. What do they know, right? And then the crypto bros being in charge of the bank now, really being tied into this. And we know that a digital currency is what the bank wants. And so they're going to implement it. So if they make Bitcoin the only thing, how's that going to look? So thinking about it a step, taking another step down, right? Taking another step forward with that. People have said for a while, Bitcoin's going to hit 100,000. People were naysaying it, whatever. Doesn't make any sense to the average person, right? Doesn't make any sense to me why that would happen. Why are you putting money into something that you don't have a real case use for, and it's supposedly the store value, right? When there's tons of third-party risk. There's tons of third-party risk on how you can't use your Bitcoin if you really needed to. And if you take the angle of, well, you can always hand off cold wallets to somebody, it really loses the use case of having Bitcoin, other than, I guess, the large amount. Anyway, the increasing dollar amounts getting tied to it, it's so young, it hasn't had a chance to be correlated with any asset, right? Like most assets have an inverse or a direct correlation with something. Real estate with the stock market, gold with the stock market to oil, or they have a relationship that you can track And when those ratios are at a certain point is a good time to flip one to the other. So when it's time to get out of house, real estate's a good time to get into oil or gold or something, depending on the value and how much of that other thing you can get. This Bitcoin does not have that history. It's just too young. It doesn't have a correlation. It's went up. I mean, you could say it kind of mirrors the stock market a little bit, I guess, but it just doesn't have enough track record to match that up. Especially with some of the crashes, depending on, say, when was this? We got here, that's 2020. Some of these spikes were in the middle of low markets. So it doesn't have that correlation to match up with even close yet. So you're really riding, what are you riding on? So this is my theory on this thing here. I have a theory. It's either being correlated with the stock market, which means it's definitely going to have a crash correction at some point, or it's being directly correlated to the debt. And we know the debt's not going anywhere but up. And what people say, everybody quotes McAfee when he said, if Bitcoin hits 100,000, it's going to 1 million. And then I asked the question on the Twitter, what's the market cap of $1 million Bitcoin? And doing the back of the napkin math, the rule of the wasteland there, did the back of the napkin math and said about 21 trillion. And my thought is, well, if you directly correlate that with the national debt, hold on to your seats, because that means Bitcoin's at least going to 2 million, because the debt's already close to 42 trillion, and Bitcoin won't get to the million and by the time the national debt gets to 42. So you're looking at Bitcoin 3 million. You heard it here first. If that's the correlation. Because I have the other theory, and we kind of floated this on the Twitter. The other theory that Bitcoin and all these things, the one thing the banks love about them is they hide inflation. These are places that money goes to die. How long has Bitcoin been in here? And people, supposedly has all this value, so all this cash gets tucked away, and it disappears for a period of time until released back into the economy, right? So it's a place where inflation could go to die. All these coins, all these things. And when some of these things get hacked and stolen, then it's kind of like dead. It's kind of like war. It's a dead weight loss in the economy. The cash just disappears, or what represents the dollar. So banks love this, and so if it matches up with the debt, to continue on with that conspiracy theory, if you want to call it that one of my theories. If it correlates with the debt, that means the crypto bros and the treasury bro definitely can ride Bitcoin into the transition to a new currency. And that might be that might be the agenda. We know the agenda is to get to digital currency, using Bitcoin as the vehicle to get there, sucking everybody into it, thinking they have more value than they do, and it gets revalued with the debt when it gets written off and a digital currency takes over that'll be valued at some value, not giving you what you thought you had in Bitcoin, is a real possibility. If you want to know the truth, because Bitcoin is just inefficient enough and just not as speedy enough to be a government program. Because when you look at how some of the other coins on here, for example, or whatever, the fees that go with them and the time and some of the energy cost that goes back into it for transactions, that's a government program. Government loves that. Government loves inefficiency when it doesn't have to be inefficient. Bitcoin's already got that built in. The market cap thing is, one thing. But if you're tying it to the debt, there is no cap. They're gonna ride it until the transition over. That's an incomplete thought, but it's one that's out there, but it also is a positive for you bros out there. Like, you can ride this to offset the inflation, because they're going to correlate it with the debt, and you're going to see Bitcoin 3 million, while the national debt's at, 50 trillion, or whatever. And at least you'll have something to make up some of that inflationary cost of all your food and everything else. So at least you'll have that going for you as far as being able to make up for lost resources. But at some point, they're going to pull it, and they're going to revalue it and turn it into something else, and you're not going to get the same value back, or an equivalent value, and however that works out. Because the way they've done it every time, when they were tied to gold, when they were tied to physical stuff, we know how they pulled the rug on everybody and then revalued. Like, they're going to do, it's going to be similar. I mean, when gold went from 20 to 35, when the government did it in 33, if they get this Bitcoin riding with the national debt, watch out. So something to keep an eye on, some thoughts there. Hopefully 420 has bought his house and has got everything paid off before this all happens, and he's just playing with monopoly money to ride out and have fun with or whatever, and he's not too overly invested. But a lot of people are just putting it in there, and they're holding it, just continue to ride it. And as it continues to go up, people are going to continue to hold, and hopefully they're just not putting too much hope in it, and they're using it as they can to reduce their exposure to the debt, and getting the opportunities to pay off that inflationary difference when they get a chance, hopefully. So that's one thing I see. I'll call it $3 million Bitcoin is in the future, and it probably isn't that far out. It's probably our lifetime. When you think about where it was, 17,000, 2018, something like that, 6 years later. Yeah, nobody, some people called it, but most people, the math wasn't mathing when you try to say something like that. The math doesn't math, but when you look at the big funds that are in the banks that are getting into this, like, the government has an infinite supply, and they can dump it all in there, and that gets matched up to the debt in the future. So $3 million Bitcoin, calling it now based upon that analysis. Because if 1 million is possible, then why not 2? And if it's correlated to debt, it's going to be 3. And at what point does the government pull the plug to transition over into that digital currency? So that's the thoughts. I hope everybody enjoyed the earthquake today that was affected over there in California. The mild little bit of unrest, it looked like, as there was tsunami warnings and people trying to jam into cars and get off the coast. And it looked like alternate and tertiary routes were not well used. From the video I saw, some of the primary routes were jammed packed, and if it would have been a real tsunami, bad things would have happened. I want to see Corsair trainers, AAR, on that event. Not that he was involved, but just, it's a prime example of knowing alternate routes, because people were stuck on that highway when they eventually did end the tsunami warning. And it's like, yeah, hopefully you had an uncomfortable feeling, and hopefully you go home and reevaluate how you're getting out of a tsunami zone next time, because that primary route is going to be too full. There needs to be some third and alternate routes done to get more people out quicker, because that wasn't working. So that's the prepping lesson of the day. So y'all be good, YouTube. Prep hard, live free.